He was the poor boy from a storage shed who became a country music giant. But behind the awards, the sold-out shows, and the steady smile was a life shaped by heartbreak, betrayal, illness, and a fight to hold on to the people he loved. This is the story of Alan Jackson, the man who rose from nothing, nearly lost everything, and kept singing even when his own legs could no longer hold him. Before the world heard his voice, a lonely little boy cried himself to sleep to the sound of Hank Williams on a fading radio. Alan Eugene Jackson was born in Newnan, Georgia, a small town where most people worked hard just to make ends meet. His parents, Ruth and Eugene, raised him in a one-bedroom home that had once been his grandfather's storage shed. It was small, crowded, and simple, but it was all they had. His father worked long hours as a mechanic, and his mother worked in a school cafeteria. Life was about surviving, not dreaming, and everyone in the house understood that. Even as a child, Alan saw how tired his parents looked every night, and he learned early that life was not easy for families like his. Alan was the youngest of 5 children, all girls except for him. His sisters were older and often acted like second mothers to him. They helped dress him, took him around town, and made sure he felt cared for. Their kindness made his small world feel warm, but that didn't last forever. One by one, as they grew up, they left home to start their own lives. The house that once felt full began to feel large and empty. With each sister leaving, Alan felt more alone. He became the quiet boy in the corner, who tried not to get in anyone's way. His parents still worked all the time, and his sisters were gone, so most evenings he spent by himself. Then came the moment that changed him in a way he never forgot. His sister Linda, who had been closest to him and often sang him lullabies, died suddenly in an accident. Alan was still a small boy, too young to fully understand death, but old enough to feel the pain. He stood next to her coffin, not knowing how to make sense of what was happening. He saw his mother cry at night when she thought no one could hear her. Feeling that sadness around him, he learned very early that the world could take people away without warning. This loss left a mark on him that would stay for the rest of his life. It shaped his quiet nature and taught him that nothing is promised, not even the people you love most. Outside the home, life was not easy either. School was a long bus ride away, more than 10 kilometers. Alan usually wore hand-me-down clothes from his sisters, patched over and over. Some children laughed at him, calling him a hillbilly or poor kid. He didn't fight them or talk back. He just kept his head down and tried to get through each day. Lunchtime was the hardest. Many days he didn't have even 5 cents to buy milk, so he sat quietly while others ate. His stomach would growl, but he stayed calm, pretending it didn't bother him. Deep inside, he carried a mix of shame and determination. He never complained. He simply learned to endure the things he could not change. After school, instead of playing outside, Alan liked to go to the garage where his father worked on cars. He would pick up tools, clean up oil spills, and watch how his father fixed engines with patience and skill. He breathed in the smell of gasoline and metal, and he saw how real men worked through exhaustion. From this, he learned that a person's value wasn't in clothes, money, or popularity. It was in how hard they tried and how they treated others. Even though people teased him, he quietly built a strong work ethic that would stay with him forever. In the long, empty nights at home, something new began to grow inside him. With his parents tired and his sisters gone, Alan often lay alone with only an old radio beside him. He would turn it on, letting the voices of Hank Williams and George Jones fill the silence. The sound was soft and a little broken, mixed with static, but it touched him deeply. Sometimes he cried without knowing why. The music felt like a friend who understood his loneliness. It gave him comfort when life felt heavy. These late-night moments were the start of his relationship with music, not as entertainment, but as an emotional shelter. When Alan was 16, his parents bought him a $50 guitar. It wasn't fancy, But for him, it felt like a doorway to a different life. He practiced every day, playing simple chords at first, then slowly learning to form melodies of his own. He didn't think of fame or success. He just loved how the guitar made him feel less alone. It was as if he finally had a way to express all the feelings he had kept inside for so long. A year later, Alan found himself standing on a small stage at his high school during a production of the musical Oklahoma. He was shy, nervous, and afraid to look at the audience at first. But when he started singing, something surprising happened. He felt like he belonged. For the first time in his life, people were listening to him, not teasing him or ignoring him. Their applause gave him a new kind of confidence. It was a small school performance, but for Alan, it was a turning point. It showed him that music was not just a comfort in his lonely nights, it was a way for him to connect with others. Still, he never imagined where this path would take him. He was just a young boy from a small town, trying to find his place in the world. His days were filled with school, family struggles, and quiet dreams. But something inside him was starting to grow, something he didn't fully understand yet. Music was becoming more than a hobby. It was slowly shaping the direction of his future. But while music was becoming his refuge, Alan had no idea that the girl who would one day save his life was about to step quietly into his story. Some love stories don't begin with destiny. They begin with a scream inside a Dairy Queen parking lot. When Alan Jackson was around 15 or 16, he noticed a girl at school named Denise. She was pretty, smart, and carried herself with quiet confidence. Alan was shy and didn't know how to approach her. Instead, he watched her from a distance, stealing small glances in the hallway. He admired her, but didn't believe someone like her would ever notice someone like him. Their first interactions were simple looks and small smiles, nothing more. But even those moments stayed with him. One day, Alan decided to do something bold, something completely out of character for a quiet boy like him. Denise had parked her car outside a Dairy Queen, a place where many teens hung out. Alan saw his chance. When Denise walked inside, he opened the car door, climbed into the back seat, and hid on the floor. When she returned, started the car, and began driving, Alan suddenly popped up and scared her so badly she screamed and pulled off to the side. Once she realized it was him, the fear turned into laughter. That strange moment broke the ice between them. They ended up talking for hours, finding comfort in each other's company under the soft Georgia sky. That night marked the start of their real connection. Their relationship grew slowly and naturally. They didn't need expensive dates or big plans. They had picnics by the river, long talks sitting on the hood of a car, and walks through their small town. They shared dreams of a future better than what they had grown up with. Alan talked about music, though he still wasn't sure he was good enough. Denise listened with encouragement, never laughing at his hopes. She believed in him even before he believed in himself. They both imagined a life beyond Noonan, but at that age, neither of them knew how hard that journey would be. When Alan was 21, he and Denise decided to get married. Their wedding was simple, held at a small church, with only a few decorations and little money. They didn't have much, but they had each other, and at that moment, it felt like enough. They were just two young kids facing the world together, full of hope but unaware of the challenges waiting ahead. Shortly after getting married, they made a big decision. Alan wanted to try Nashville, the heart of country music, and chase his dream. Denise agreed to go with him, ready to support him, even though they had almost no savings. When they arrived in Nashville, reality hit them harshly. They found a damp basement apartment under an old church. It was small, dark, and far from comfortable. The walls were cold, the air was musty, and they could hear the sound of mice running across the ceiling. Their mattress leaked air every night, and they woke up tired. But despite all this, they held on to each other tightly. They told themselves it was temporary, just the price they had to pay while building a better future. Denise took a job as a flight attendant, which meant long hours and constant travel. She was often exhausted, but she never complained. She wanted Alan to have the chance to focus on music. Alan, on the other hand, worked whatever jobs he could find during the day. At night, he played in small bars, clubs, or anywhere people would let him perform. Some nights the crowd didn't listen, and other nights he earned only a few dollars. He submitted demo tapes to record labels, but they came back rejected again and again. Each rejection felt like a punch to the hope he carried. Many nights, Alan wondered if he was wasting time. He thought about giving up and returning to Georgia, but every time he felt like quitting, Denise reminded him why they came. Her simple words kept him going when his confidence was fading. Their life in Nashville was full of difficulty. They had little money, very little comfort, and no guarantee that their sacrifices would pay off. But in those moments, they also grew stronger together. They whispered encouragement to each other at night, promising they would get through it. Even when their stomachs were empty or their hearts were tired, they held on. The struggle shaped them more deeply than success ever could. Then something happened that neither of them expected. One day, while working as a flight attendant, Denise saw Glenn Campbell on her flight. Glenn Campbell was one of Alan's musical heroes. Denise gathered her courage, walked toward him, and handed him a small cassette tape of Alan's songs. She simply said, "My husband sings really well. Please listen if you can." It was a humble request, nothing dramatic, but this small act changed their lives. Glenn Campbell listened to the tape and then gave it to Keith Stegall, a respected figure in the Nashville music scene. That connection eventually reached Arista Records. Suddenly, the doors that had been closed for so long began to open. Alan received a contact from the label, something that seemed impossible only a short time earlier. After years of doubt and struggle, hope finally appeared. All the long nights, the tears, the hard work, and the rejections suddenly made sense. This moment started a chain of events that would launch Alan Jackson into the world of country music in a way he never imagined. But as doors began to open, neither Alan nor Denise knew that fame would not only elevate him, it would nearly destroy everything they built together. He came to Nashville with $300 and a dream, and within a decade, he became the man who dared to tell Nashville its soul was dying. After years of struggling in small bars and sending out demo tapes that came back rejected, Alan Jackson finally got the call he had been waiting for. Arista Records wanted to meet him. This happened because Glenn Campbell had passed along Alan's tape to the right people, and from there, everything began to change. When Alan walked into the Arista office, he was still the same quiet, humble young man from Georgia, but now someone in the industry finally saw what he had to offer. When he signed his first record deal, it felt like a dream coming true not only for him but for Denise, who had stood beside him through every difficult moment. In 1990, Alan released his first album, Here in the Real World. It didn't take long for people to notice that his sound was different. His voice was warm, honest, and full of real-life experiences. He didn't try to sound flashy or modern. He simply told stories, the kind of stories people understood because they came straight from everyday life. Country music had always been about truth, and listeners felt that truth in Alan's songs. Radio stations started playing his music more and more, and soon he became known as one of the most authentic voices in Nashville. For a man who once felt invisible, this recognition was powerful. The 1,990 seconds became the decade when Alan Jackson rose to the top of country music. One hit followed another. Songs like Chattahoochee, Livin' on Love, Gone Country, Someday, Chasin' That Neon Rainbow, and many others became part of American life. People played them at cookouts, weddings, long car rides, and quiet evenings at home. Alan's music reached both young fans and older generations because he sang in a way that felt honest and familiar. Even when the industry started shifting toward a more polished, pop-influenced sound, Alan stayed true to his roots. He became known as the simple, honest Southern man who never tried to pretend he was something else. His boots, hat, and calm presence all matched the music he made. Listeners trusted him. But behind the scenes, the country music industry was changing. Nashville began welcoming songs that blended pop production with country themes. Many artists went along with the trend, adjusting their sound to match what was selling at the time. Alan didn't want to do that. He believed country music had a heart and a history that needed to be protected. He didn't want it to lose its identity just to follow what was popular. Even when record executives suggested new directions or styles, Alan stayed firm. He wanted to honor the sound he grew up loving, the sound of Hank Williams, George Jones, and Merle Haggard. One example of his commitment came from a simple moment in a small bar. The jukebox was shaking and making noise, and someone jokingly said it was rocking too much. Alan heard this and immediately thought it would make a great song idea. That moment inspired "Don't Rock the Jukebox," a playful but meaningful message about keeping true country music alive. It became another hit and showed once again that Alan could turn everyday moments into songs people connected with. His strongest statement about protecting country music came in the year 2000, when he joined George Strait in recording "Murder on Music Row." The song criticized the direction Nashville was heading and accused the industry of abandoning traditional country styles. Many people in the music world were shocked. Some praised Alan and George for speaking the truth, while others felt they had gone too far. But Alan never backed down. He believed someone needed to say it, and he was willing to take the risk. The collaboration became historic, and the song remains one of the boldest moments in modern country music history. Then came the 11th of September, 2001, a day that changed America forever. Like millions of others, Alan watched the news in disbelief. A few days later, he woke up at 4 a.m., with words in his mind. He felt something telling him to write. He sat down and began creating what would become "Where Were You When the World Stopped Turning?" The lyrics were simple, but carried deep meaning. The song didn't judge, preach, or try to offer answers. Instead, it described the feelings of ordinary people: confusion, sorrow, fear, and hope. It was a rare moment when a song captured the emotions of an entire country. When Alan performed the song at the 2001 CMA Awards, the room fell silent. No instruments overwhelmed the moment. His voice was calm and sincere. Many people in the audience cried. Viewers at home felt the same. It became one of the most memorable performances in country music history. The song reached millions of people and reminded them that music can help heal during the darkest times. For Alan, it was not about fame or charts. It was about offering comfort when people needed it most. By this time, he had sold millions of records, won countless awards, and become one of the most respected artists in Nashville. His rise from a poor boy in Georgia to a national figure was nothing short of remarkable. But even as his career reached astonishing heights, something else was happening at home. With every tour, every long absence, every new demand on his time, a quiet distance was forming between him and the person who had supported him since his youth. Success brought pride and opportunity, but it also brought pressure and separation. But while the world celebrated his voice, a silence was beginning to grow inside his marriage, one that no award could drown out. A man can conquer the charts, but still lose everything that waits for him at home. As Alan's career grew in the 1,990 seconds, his schedule became heavier, and his time at home became less. Concerts, tours, interviews, recording sessions, and award shows filled his days. While the world saw a rising star, Denise saw her husband slipping away from their everyday life. She had been the one who supported him when he had nothing. She shared the struggle, the poverty, the rejections, and the hope. But as success arrived, she began to feel left behind. Alan was living in the fast-paced world of music, surrounded by excitement and constant attention, while Denise was at home caring for their growing family. Slowly, two different worlds started forming between them. The emotional distance didn't happen overnight. It came quietly, almost unnoticed at first. Alan would return from tours exhausted, and instead of talking and reconnecting, he often withdrew. Denise, on the other hand, felt more and more alone. She often wondered where she fit into his new life. The man she married was starting to feel like a stranger. She supported his dream, but she never expected the dream to take him so far away from her heart. The silence between them grew heavier with time. Then came the moment that changed everything. Alan admitted he had been unfaithful. For Denise, hearing those words felt like watching her whole world collapse. It wasn't just the betrayal itself, it was the feeling that all the years of love, sacrifice, and support had been ignored. In her memoir, she wrote openly about the pain she experienced. She described how she felt insecure, unworthy, and lost. She had spent years helping him build his dream, but somewhere along the way, she lost her own identity. She no longer recognized the strong, confident woman she once was. The confession tore their marriage apart. In 1997, at a time when they were supposed to be enjoying the height of their success as a family, Denise made the difficult decision to move out with their children. Their separation lasted several months. During this time, both of them struggled deeply. Denise tried to rebuild her emotional strength, but the hurt remained heavy inside her. She questioned everything, her choices, her marriage, her future. Meanwhile, Alan entered a dark period. He felt empty and consumed by guilt. The glamorous world of music felt meaningless without his family. He drank more, isolated himself, and wrote heartbreak songs that reflected the pain he felt inside. One of those songs, Gone Crazy, came from this painful chapter, expressing the regret he could not hide. Their individual journeys during the separation were filled with confusion and emotional struggle. Alan realized that the fame he had worked so hard for could not replace the love he was losing. Denise realized that she had given so much of herself to his dream that she no longer knew who she was without him. Both were hurting, and both were lost in different ways. Yet, despite the heartbreak, neither of them fully let go of hope. Deep down, they both wanted to save what they had built together over so many years. The rebuilding of their marriage did not happen quickly. It was a slow, difficult process that required painful honesty and emotional vulnerability. They began counseling, where they talked openly about their problems, their misunderstandings, and the wounds that had been growing for years. They joined marriage support groups with other couples who were struggling. These groups helped them see that other people also faced the same challenges and that healing was possible. Denise found strength in her faith. She began reading the Bible, praying, and reconnecting with herself as an individual. This spiritual journey helped her rebuild her confidence and identity. For Alan, rebuilding trust meant proving through actions that he had changed. He listened more, apologized sincerely, and took responsibility for the pain he caused. He realized that love was not only about the good times, but also about facing difficult truths. They both reopened old wounds, not to hurt each other, but to clean them and allow them to heal properly. It was emotional, painful, and sometimes overwhelming, but little by little, they began to understand each other again. Their effort reached a turning point on their 19th wedding anniversary in 1998. They renewed their vows in the same Noonan church where they were married. This time, the ceremony was not about youthful hope or dreams. It was about forgiveness, maturity, and a deeper understanding of love. Their 3 daughters were there to witness the moment. It was a symbol of a second chance, a chance they both fought hard for. After renewing their vows, their marriage began to grow stronger than before. They learned how to communicate, how to prioritize their family, and how to protect their relationship from the pressures of fame. Alan's song Remember When beautifully describes their journey from young love to heartbreak to healing. The song became their love story in musical form. It reminded listeners that real love is not perfect, but it survives through honesty, forgiveness, and effort. For many fans, the song became a reflection of their own relationships and struggles. By the early 2000s, Alan and Denise had created a healthier marriage built on mutual respect and understanding. Their relationship had been tested, broken, and rebuilt. It no longer looked like the simple teenage love story it once was. It now carried scars, lessons, and a deeper appreciation for each other. They emerged stronger, more patient, and more aware of how precious their bond was. But just as they rebuilt the life they nearly lost, a new storm appeared, one that threatened the very heartbeat of their family. The world saw a superstar, but inside the Jackson home, a battle for survival had begun. After repairing their marriage and finding a new sense of peace, Alan and Denise thought their hardest days were behind them. They were reconnecting, spending more time together, and raising their 3 daughters with a stronger foundation than before. But life often tests people when they least expect it. In the early 2000s, Denise went to a routine medical checkup, and the results changed everything. She was diagnosed with cervical cancer. The shock hit the family with full force. One moment she seemed healthy, and the next they were hearing words no family ever wants to hear. Denise later said she felt like the floor disappeared under her feet. Alan described it as a moment when the world suddenly went silent. Doctors explained the medical details carefully. Cervical cancer can grow quietly for years before symptoms appear. In the early stages, it can often be treated successfully, but if it spreads, the treatment becomes more aggressive and painful. The explanation made everything feel even more frightening. Denise couldn't believe she was now facing a disease that might take her away from her family. The diagnosis brought fear, confusion, and emotional devastation. She felt overwhelmed, not only for herself, but also for her daughters, and for Alan, who had already gone through so much with her. The treatment process began quickly, and it was harsh. Denise had to undergo chemotherapy and other medical procedures that drained her body and spirit. Chemo caused severe fatigue, nausea, and hair loss. Her skin grew pale, and her strength faded day by day. A woman who had always been strong, active, and full of life could now barely get out of bed. Watching her go through this was painful for the entire family. Their daughters were young and did not fully understand what was happening, but they could see their mother changing. They saw her lose her hair, struggle to walk, or sit quietly because she didn't have the energy to talk. The fear in their eyes made the situation even harder. The Jackson home, which had recently been filled with healing and new hope, now felt heavy with worry. Simple tasks became difficult. Emotional conversations became common. The family tried to stay strong, but the truth was that they were scared. Cancer brought an emotional storm that none of them were prepared for. Alan, who had stood on stages in front of thousands without fear, felt helpless watching his wife suffer. The man known for his calm presence now found himself overwhelmed by anxiety and sadness. This period changed Alan in a deep way. He shifted from a world of music, lights, and busy schedules to the quiet, painful reality of being a caretaker. He went from performing on stage to sitting in hospital rooms, holding Denise's hand while she went through treatments. He watched her fight through pain, and he stayed by her side even when she was too weak to talk. He said later, "We thought we would lose everything." Those words showed how close they felt to losing their family's stability, their joy, and the life they had worked so hard to rebuild. During this difficult time, Denise experienced a spiritual awakening. Her fear pushed her to seek comfort in prayer and faith. She began reading the Bible more often and found strength in her belief that she was not fighting alone. This spiritual journey helped her stay hopeful, even on the hardest days. She started to see life differently, understanding its fragility more clearly than ever. Alan and the children also leaned on faith, finding support in small moments of hope. Their family bond grew stronger because they learned to depend on each other emotionally. The treatments slowly began to show results. Each positive update from the doctors brought relief. Step by step, Denise started to regain strength. Her hair began to grow back. Her energy returned little by little, and the pain eased. The fear inside the house slowly started to lift. After a long and painful journey, the doctors confirmed that the treatments were successful. Denise had survived. The family cried, not because they were sad, but because the weight they had carried for so long was finally lifting. This victory was more than a medical achievement. It was a turning point for the Jackson family. The experience deepened their love and appreciation for each other. They no longer took simple moments for granted. A quiet breakfast, a walk outside, or an evening together felt like gifts. Alan and Denise both realized how easily life can change and how important it is to cherish every day. Their marriage, already healed from earlier struggles, now became even stronger. They had walked through another storm together and had come out holding on tighter than before. Denise's recovery also gave her a new perspective. She became more open about her journey, hoping her story would encourage other women to get regular screenings. She wanted people to understand that early detection saves lives and that emotional and spiritual support is just as important as medical treatment. Her honesty inspired many, and she became a symbol of strength and hope for those facing similar battles. For Alan, seeing Denise survive the disease reminded him what truly mattered. Fame, awards, and tours were important, but none of them compared to the health and happiness of his family. He felt grateful that he still had his wife by his side, and he carried that gratitude with him into his music and daily life. Their home, once filled with fear, was now filled with relief and quiet joy. But the universe was not finished testing Alan. The next battle would strike not his family, but his own body. How does a man who once commanded stadiums face a disease that steals the very legs he stands on? After surviving the struggles of marriage and watching Denise defeat cancer, Alan Jackson hoped for a calmer chapter in life. But life had another painful test waiting. Around the mid-2010 seconds, Alan began noticing small changes in his body. His legs felt weaker. His balance wasn't the same. He stumbled at times, even when he wasn't tired. At first, he tried to ignore it, telling himself it was age or exhaustion from years of touring. But the symptoms slowly grew worse, and he knew something was wrong. Doctors eventually diagnosed him with Charcot-Marie tooth disease, often called CMT. It was hereditary, passed from his father's side. CMT causes the nerves that control muscles to weaken over time. This leads to muscle loss, balance problems, and difficulty walking. It does not have a cure, and the symptoms get worse as the years go by. For a man whose life had been built on standing tall before thousands of fans, this diagnosis was heartbreaking. It wasn't just a physical struggle, it was emotional. Alan had to accept that his body would never work the way it once did. As his condition developed, people sometimes misunderstood what they saw. Fans noticed him stumbling on stage or having trouble walking. Rumors spread. Some thought he was tired, others assumed he had been drinking. But the truth was far heavier. His legs were simply not responding the way they used to. Talking about personal weakness was never easy for Alan. He had always been a private man who preferred to let his music speak for him, but he also valued honesty, and he didn't want people to misjudge him. In 2021, he decided to share his diagnosis publicly. When he revealed he had Charcot-Marie tooth disease, he spoke with honesty and calmness. He said he wanted people to understand that his stumbling or lack of balance was not carelessness and not a sign of drinking. It was a disease he had been fighting quietly for years. Admitting this to the world took courage. It meant showing vulnerability at a time when many still saw him as a strong country icon. His openness helped many people understand the condition better, especially those who lived with the same disease. His fans responded with love and support, and many thanked him for bringing attention to a disorder that was rarely talked about. Despite the diagnosis, Alan was not ready to stop singing. Music had been his comfort since childhood, and he refused to let the disease take that away from him. In 2024, he announced his farewell tour titled Last Call, One More for the Road. It was his way of saying goodbye to the stage while he still had the strength to perform. The tour covered several major cities from 2024 to 2025. Tickets sold out quickly because fans knew this might be their last chance to see him live. Many said they wanted to thank him in person for the songs that had shaped their lives. During the shows, people noticed that although his legs were weaker, his voice remained strong and steady. He sometimes needed support to move across the stage, but when he stood behind the microphone, the power of his voice reminded everyone why he had become a legend. Fans cried, clapped, and sang along to classics like Chattahoochee, Livin' on Love, and Remember When. The concert halls were filled with gratitude. Every show felt like a celebration of a career that had touched millions. Alan also used the tour to help others. He decided to donate $1 from every ticket sold to the CMT Research Foundation, an organization working to find better treatments and, someday, a cure for Charcot-Marie-Tooth disease. This act showed who he truly was, a man who turned his personal struggle into something meaningful for others. His generosity inspired fans and brought new attention to the disease. Many people who had never heard of CMT began researching it, supporting the cause, and sharing stories of their own struggles. On stage, Alan showed the world what it means to fight with dignity. Even as his body weakened, he refused to surrender. He smiled, joked with fans, and delivered every song with sincerity. Every performance became a quiet victory. Each night he walked onto the stage was a reminder that the disease had not taken away his spirit. The image of him standing under the lights, holding the microphone even as his legs trembled, became a powerful symbol of strength. He didn't pretend to be invincible. Instead, he showed that courage is not the absence of weakness. It is continuing forward in spite of it. Many fans said these final shows were the most emotional concerts they had ever attended. People saw a man giving everything he had left, not for fame, but for love. Love for the music that raised him, and love for the fans who stood by him through every chapter of his life. The farewell tour was not just a series of concerts, it was a closing chapter written with gratitude, honesty, and resilience. By the end of the tour in 2025, Alan's body was noticeably more tired. Walking became harder. Standing for long periods was painful, but he finished every show he promised to perform. When he sang the final notes, he often looked emotional, knowing each concert brought him one step closer to the end of his stage career. Fans cheered louder each night, trying to give him back even a small piece of what he had given them for decades. People believed the farewell tour was the final curtain drop. But even as the curtain seemed to fall, Alan had one more unexpected gesture, a final whisper of goodbye that no one saw coming. When a man has given the world his music, what does he hold on to when the world grows quiet? After finishing his farewell tour, Alan Jackson slowly stepped away from the spotlight that had followed him for more than 3 decades. Instead of big stages and loud crowds, he returned to a quieter life on his farm in Franklin, Tennessee. This place, surrounded by peaceful land and open skies, became his safe space. Here, he spent time with the things that brought him comfort long before fame ever found him. He enjoyed working on his classic cars, fixing parts, cleaning engines, and remembering the simple days when he stood beside his father in the garage. He also loved gardening, planting flowers and vegetables, watching things grow at their own pace. Fishing became another way he relaxed, sitting by the water with no pressure, no cameras, and no schedule. And even though his public performances slowed down, he never fully stopped writing. Sometimes he still picked up a guitar and wrote songs quietly at home, not for charts or awards, but for peace of mind. A new and very meaningful chapter of his life opened when he became a grandfather. Holding his grandchild softened him in a way that surprised even him. He often talked about how this new role changed his heart. He said, "It makes me want to go home more." For a man who spent most of his life traveling, performing, and living on the road, These words showed how deeply family now mattered to him. Spending time with his grandchild brought him joy in a simple and warm way. It reminded him of the days when he was raising his own daughters, and it made him grateful to still be here to experience this stage of life. He found happiness in small moments, like watching a toddler smile, taking slow walks, or sitting together on the porch during a quiet afternoon. Even though Alan stepped back from the spotlight, his influence on a new generation of country artists remained strong. Many well-known singers, including Luke Bryan and Eric Church, openly talked about how much his music shaped their own careers. Luke Bryan said he grew up listening to Alan's songs, and they helped form his understanding of real country music. Eric Church honored him at the 2024 ACM Awards, calling him a national treasure and praising the truth and simplicity in his music. For younger artists, Alan wasn't just another star. He represented honesty, tradition, and the roots of country storytelling. His songs were not about trends or commercial pressure. They were about life, hardship, love, and heart values that many artists admired and wanted to carry forward. Throughout his career, Alan stayed committed to protecting traditional country music. While many artists moved toward modern, pop-influenced styles, he stayed grounded in the sound he grew up with. Because of this, he became known as one of the genre's strongest defenders. His dedication earned him great respect in the industry. Awards like the ACM Poets Award recognized him for writing lyrics that touched people's hearts and remained meaningful over time. His place as a guardian of country tradition became clear. Fans and musicians alike looked to him as a reminder of what country music truly stands for: storytelling from the soul. Just when people thought Alan had said his final goodbye on stage, he surprised the world with one more announcement. He would do a final show in Nashville in the summer of 2026. Fans were stunned. Many thought his last tour in 2024, 2025 had already closed the chapter. But this extra show felt different. It felt personal. Nashville was the city where his dream began, where he struggled, grew, and became a star. Doing a final show there was like coming full circle. It was one last gift to the people who supported him from the very beginning. The emotional weight of this final Nashville farewell was heavy for both fans and Alan himself. Many people expected it to be the true ending of his stage life. Fans wondered what he would say, what songs he would choose, and how he would stand on that stage, knowing it might be for the last time. Some asked themselves if he had something important left to share, a final message, a final thank you, or maybe a final reminder of what mattered most to him. The thought of seeing him perform again, even with his physical challenges, made the event incredibly meaningful. As Alan settled into life beyond the spotlight, people began reflecting on what his journey truly represented. It wasn't just the story of a successful musician. It was a story built on love, faith, loss, and persistence. He came from poverty, from a small home built out of a storage shed. He faced bullying, heartbreak, and rejection. He worked hard jobs and played in tiny bars before anyone noticed him. He survived the pressures of fame, the pain of betrayal, the struggle of rebuilding a marriage, and the fear of almost losing his wife to cancer. Later, he faced his own illness, a condition that slowly took away his strength, but never took away his spirit. Through all of this, he kept singing, not just in concerts, but in the way he lived, with honesty and resilience. His legacy is more than awards or records sold. It is the emotional connection people feel when they hear his songs. It is the way his music became part of American life, songs played at weddings, funerals, road trips, and quiet nights. His journey shows how a boy with very little can become a symbol of tradition, courage, and sincerity. Alan Jackson became an American treasure not because he tried to be one, but because he stayed true to who he was. As he moves into the later years of his life, surrounded by family, memories, and the music he created, his story remains alive in the hearts of millions. fans understand that his journey shaped not only his own life, but the entire history of modern country music. The shy boy who once cried himself to sleep with a radio became a voice that comforted others for decades. And as Alan Jackson steps into the quiet evening of his life, one question remains, not for him, but for us. What does a legend leave behind in the hearts he touched?